I'm Lynn Packer. This video is about the failed management of the Hill Farms Homeowners Association in Kaysville, Utah. It's now much worse than the grim picture I painted in a YouTube report posted almost 2 years ago. Keep in mind, I am not an attorney or accountant. No one should rely on opinions I express in this report. Hill Farms HOA members especially should carefully read the governing documents, conduct their own research, and consult with an attorney. The Hill Farms Homeowners Association, HOA for short, was never properly set up and never put into full operation by the developer Destination Homes Incorporated as required by contract and law. The HOA's covenants, the rules, were never widely observed by homeowners and only partially enforced by the HOA, and, eventually, not enforced at all. The HOA is underfunded, underinsured, and poorly maintained in order to keep dues artificially low. Its largest park, as an example, was poorly built and has been poorly maintained. The HOA board and its management company are slow to address hazards which unnecessarily increase homeowner liability risk. A homeowners association is the organization for a subdivision that established and enforces rules and maintains common ground. Home buyers automatically become members under contract to pay fees and abide by the rules, which are much more restrictive than city ordinances. HOAs have boards of directors selected or elected to enforce rules outlined in the Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, also known as CC&Rs, along with other governing documents. At first, the developer, also called the declarant, selects directors and controls the HOA until transferring that control to the homeowners after selling a certain number of lots. First, consider the main purpose of an HOA. I'll play a video clip wherein an Arizona attorney who specializes in HOA law explains that without compliance, that is, without enforcing HOA rules, there is no HOA.
The important part in all of this for everyone to understand is that without enforcement of the restrictive covenants, there would be no community association. The whole singular purpose of a community association is to add an additional level of restrictions, more encompassing than what you would get with the city, in order to create a specific type of living environment.
The Hill Farms HOA has become a shipwreck of a disaster. It's gone from extremely inconsistent covenant and rules enforcement to no enforcement at all. None. When an HOA lets one rule slide, then another, when one neighbor sees another ignoring a restriction and it's not enforced, they ignore it too. And so goes the slide to the bottom. The main benefits of living in the Hill Farms HOA were never fully realized and now have completely vanished. There never was widespread compliance and thorough enforcement. Many rules were not enforced at all, others selectively enforced. Many residents are spending the time and money to comply. Many others ignore the rules. When the HOA changed managers in January 2020 with no advance notice, in secret, enforcement went from bad to more than worse to none. Many rules may be legally abandoned. The developer, Destination Homes, is leaving homeowners, when they take over, a mess that may be unfixable. Let me explain it this way by describing a fully functioning HOA. It would have a uniformity in appearance and achieves higher property values, would be free of clutter, free of badly landscaped and poorly maintained yards, void of unsightly storage like RVs and trailers. It would have substantial rules compliance and conscientious rules enforcement, and common areas maintained in first-class, safe condition. However, the Hill Farms HOA was never fully functioning, never fully afloat like this ship. The HOA was half sunk, even from the beginning, rules widely ignored, sporadically enforced. Today, rules are not enforced at all, common areas poorly maintained. It's underwater. It's dead. The only question, can it be revived? How did it happen? Probably a combination of incompetence and dishonesty. Homeowners have extremely limited power, thus few options while the developer controls the HOA. No vote on major HOA decisions. Not even notice before the board makes decisions. Sometimes no alerts after the board acts. Yet homeowners foot most of the bill for the HOA's operation. It is taxation without representation. Utah laws that favor developers create a breeding ground for corrupt HOAs. There are few places to turn for help. There's no HOA ombudsman in the state's Consumer Protection Division, no dedicated prosecutor in the Attorney General's office, no mandatory independent financial audit law, no managing agent state licensing law, no required declarant or director conflict of interest disclosures, no mandatory director certification, and no mandatory timely termination of declarant control like many states have. What can Hill Farms HOA members do? At least the ones who are concerned. Not much, really. One option, bring a civil lawsuit against the Hill Farms HOA board and or the declarant Legacy Neighborhoods and or the developer Destination Homes and or possibly the board's management company Welch Randall for suspected breach of contract and breach of fiduciary duty. But there are lots of lawsuit problems. If homeowners sue their HOA itself, they're also suing themselves as members. Litigation is expensive. How do you get enough homeowners to chip in? Members could lose and end up paying for both plaintiff and defendant legal fees. Because Utah law heavily favors developers, homeowner consumers undertake litigation with one hand tied behind their backs. Another possibility is the petition. Members have been denied voting rights until turnover, but they do have petition power to try to shame the board and developer into acting. They could try to get a homeowner majority to petition the developer and board and ask for one of three actions. Rescue the sunken ship. Review all properties for compliance and require that all members who signed contracts, all of them dead, come into compliance. Ask the developer to voluntarily relinquish control soon, which is provided for in the HOA's governing documents, so members could take over and attempt to clean up their mess. 3, ask the developer to dissolve the HOA and try and get Kaysville City to take over the ownership and upkeep of the common areas. It's possible, but extremely difficult. Once an HOA is created, like Frankenstein's monster, it's almost impossible to kill off. Maybe there's a legislative solution. Lobby the legislature to rescind the onerous language that gives developers so much power. If developers can lobby for laws that favor them, then homeowner consumers can lobby to level the playing field. That is, remove the loopholes that are so big you could sail an ocean liner through them. Developers are exempt from certain laws as they run an HOA that homeowners have to follow when they take over. Too often the law states rules that do not apply during the period of administrative control. That double standard needs to go. Take the law on open board meetings. It says a board may take action only at a board meeting. But it goes on to say the provisions of this section do not apply during the period of administrative control. There is an exception. During the period of administrative control, the association shall hold a meeting at least once a year and each time the association increases a fee or raises an assessment. I should note that the Hill Farms HOA board and the HOA attorney do not believe B applies. That is, the HOA does not, at the very least, need to hold an open board meeting once a year, and any time it increases fees. It did raise fees this year, twice, with no advance notice, no board meeting. Here's how HOA attorney Blake Johnson explained the board raising fees outside a meeting in secret. He wrote, "The bylaws allow for action without meeting when a majority of board members approve an action." He said the assessment increase was approved as an action without meeting by the majority of the board members. Of course, I disagree. I think state law trumps the developer's self-serving language in the bylaws, which, by the way, Johnson's law firm wrote. Here's another double standard Utah law that governs the termination of developer or declarant control when it's passed to homeowners. The law says, a period of administrative control terminates 60 days after 75% of the lots are conveyed to lot owners other than a declarant. But hey, that's already happened at Hill Farms. And here's the loophole right there. Unless otherwise provided for in a declaration. Then the law goes on to say, the declarant may require, for the duration of the period of administrative control, that actions of the association or board be approved by the declarant before they become effective. So, wow, the declarant can even overrule the board it appoints. But let's go on. It gets even worse. Utah law requires that HOAs be set up to provide member voting. But, no surprise, Utah law permits HOA declarants to subvert that right while in control. Here's how. The Hill Farms HOA Declaration, one of the governing documents, gives members 1 vote per lot, while the developer gives itself, and I'm not making this up, 100 votes per lot and 100 votes per acre. Here's the language in the declaration that gives the developer 100 votes per lot under the heading, Members shall have voting rights. It divides the association into 2 classes, Class A and Class B. Now, the members, the homeowners, are Class A. I don't know why they call it Class A, but it says they only get 1 vote. Then Class B, that's the declarant, that's the developer, they get their 100 votes. What happens if owners select an option to do nothing? That is, wait until the developer turns over control, which is at least 2 years away, maybe a lot longer. Inept management has left some hazards in the subdivision, especially involving playground equipment that subject all homeowners to heightened financial liability risk. Perceived benefits of HOAs, that is, maintaining or even raising property values, will continue plummeting. The longer the problem goes on, the more difficult it may be to solve. Now I'll start getting into the details. How did Hill Farms go from an HOA that never got afloat to one that is now completely sunk? In other words, how did Hill Farms homeowners end up in this predicament? I'll begin at the beginning. Here's how it came about. Destination Homes was formed in 2001 by Brad Wilson and David Bailey. Golden Land Management in 2013. It mostly involves Randy Marriott Construction Company and Cammie Marriott, his wife, as president and director. These 2 companies got together and formed Legacy Neighborhoods, LLC in September 2013 with David Bailey and Cammie Marriott as the original managers, and that's the HOA declarant. That entity, in turn, formed Hill Farms in October 2013, a month later. So Destination Homes builds the homes, Golden Land Management bought a lot of the property, and Legacy Neighborhoods controls the HOA via board members. And then there's Welch Randall, the management company that manages the HOA. Here are some of the key players. David Bailey and Brad Wilson, Destination Homes co-founders, they were selected by the Hill family to build homes. David Bailey signs a lot of the documents, and his brother has a house in Hill Farms. Randy and Cammie Marriott, the contractors and landowners, they partnered with Destination to buy land, and they also construct a lot of the water and sewer infrastructure. The Welch Randall Company was hired by the board to manage the HOA. They participate in some of the homeowner meetings, Brad Randall and Amber Flink. There are 3 Destination Home employees who are members of the board. They're directors, Jared McGavin, John Warnick, and Annie McDonald. There are 2 members of the board, directors, who are regular homeowners, Aaron Hickson and John McFarlane. And of course, Blake Johnson is the HOA's attorney. Here's what I think is the most ominous of many ominous developments. It's the one that stopped the HOA dead in its tracks. Community Solutions and Sales of Draper, CSS, was the manager. My previous YouTube video goes into a lot of detail about CSS. Then, on January 1st, 2020, it was replaced by Welch Randall of Ogden, and it goes by WREE, Welch Randall Real Estate. January 1st, 2020 is the day the Hill Farms HOA died. Rarely can someone pinpoint an exact day an entity expires, but this is one of the times. Everything else, all the additional problems beyond this point in my report, they all amount to desecrating the grave. The HOA board, without informing homeowners, without holding a meeting and casting an open vote, dropped CSS as a management company and hired Ogden-based Welch Randall Property Management, a subsidiary of Welch Randall Real Estate Services. There was no competitive bidding for the contract. Welch Randall is not independent of the developer Destination Homes. WRRE has a huge conflict of interest because it also markets Hill Farms homes that are listed for sale. WRRE, like the developer, has a financial and marketing interest in keeping dues artificially low and rules laxly enforced, if at all. Not surprising that WRRE's rules enforcement is even worse than CSS's. Here's Exhibit A, actually one of a lot of exhibits where Welch Randall is marketing a home on Angel Street. Welch Randall does inspect the subdivision for infractions, but in the past 15 months, the manager has made only 7 inspections. The contract requires 29 to have been made by now. It appears to be violating its contract. The 7 inspections resulted in no warnings, and it follows, resulted in no fines, no compliance. In short, Welch Randall conducted sham inspections. It appears to be violating a fiduciary duty. The inspection reports consisted mostly of taking photos of dry grass spots and sections of dead grass. Many of the possible violations were on common area grass maintained under Welch Randall's direction. They were dinging themselves. Here's a sample page from an inspection report. Like I said, most of the photos in all 7 reports show dry or dead grass. Anyone familiar with legitimate HOA inspection reports would likely find them extremely bizarre. As I said, multiple inspection photos show turf problems in common areas. This is a shot the inspector took of the park north of our house. It's been poorly maintained by the landscaping service that was initially given a no-bid contract. I complained about it many times. The grass was overwatered, mowed way too short, and infested with grubs. Yet last year, the landscaping company mowed it again and again when the grass was too short and too sick to cut. This year, the landscaping service took up where it left off, mowing grass that is still suffering from poor care last year. Back to the Welch-Randall inspection photos. A few showed faded and worn red paint on curbs next to fire hydrants. Hill Farms has no requirement for homeowners to paint curbs if a fire hydrant is in front of their house. Besides, it's city property. If there were litigation against the HOA's manager or others, the inspection reports would be what attorneys call smoking gun evidence of breach of contract and breach of fiduciary duty. In other words, a failure to enforce the rules. Smoking gun evidence being an object, document, or admission that serves as conclusive, indisputable evidence that is strong enough to clearly prove something. By failing to enforce its rules, the Hill Farms HOA may have abandoned some or all of its rules. When does it become impossible to resurrect an HOA that is drowned, essentially is dead? At what point do the rules become unenforceable ever because they were selectively enforced or not enforced at all? Utah HOA attorney John Richards asks the same question and answers it, citing a key Utah appeals court case. When is a CC&R or a bylaw provision deemed abandoned and no longer enforceable? In Fink v. Miller, the Millers submitted plans that showed a proposed wood shingle for their roof. However, later, the Millers amended their plans, requesting approval for a fiberglass shingle. The Design Review Committee rejected the request for a fiberglass shingle because it wanted to keep the CC&R's requirement of wood shingles. However, at that time, 23 out of 81 homes had non-wood shingles. As a general rule, property owners who have purchased land in a subdivision have the right to enforce such restrictions against property owners who do not comply with the stated restrictions. However, property owners may lose this right if the specific covenant they seek to enforce has been abandoned, thereby rendering the covenant unenforceable. Now I'm getting to the important part of the appeals court's decision. The court found that 23 of 81 homes had non-conforming shingles. It found that the violation was sufficiently widespread. That fact, coupled with the lack of enforcement efforts over the years, was enough to find the wood shingle covenant abandoned. The test that the court imposed was as follows. The violations are so great, that is, so numerous, as to lead the mind of the average person to reasonably conclude that the restriction in question has been abandoned. The test is met when the average person, upon inspection of a subdivision and knowing of a certain restriction, will readily observe sufficient violations so that he or she will logically infer that the property owners neither adhere to nor enforce the restriction. This is a test that could be applied to Hill Farms. What violations would a person who knows the rules observe? Besides conducting sham inspections, Welch-Randall issued some toothless warnings of covenant violations. Despite dozens of violations in plain sight that anyone walking through the development could easily observe, maybe in the hundreds, Welch-Randall's manager only issued 10 warnings in 15 months. That's fewer than one suspected infraction a month. Half of them, 5, were issued on the same day to owners on one street who failed to move their garbage cans from the street on garbage collection day. Not one of those resulted in any follow-up check to see if there was compliance. No fines were levied. Indeed, Welch-Randall has not imposed a single fine since taking over in January 2020. Let's glance at enforcement by the previous manager, CSS, prior to January 2020. Here are a few of dozens of examples. Trailer and driveway, unscreened play elements, our view in plain view, trash bins in sight of the road, chain-link dog run, yard not landscaped within a year, very tall weeds, dog waste, running a preschool, unregistered vehicle in storage, signs in front yard. The inspector admitted that she was told by the developer to not enforce some of the infractions, such as play equipment. Here are some easily detected violations Welch-Randall missed, what any observer familiar with the rules would see walking through Hill Farms. Garbage cans improperly stored, trees and parking strips not mulched according to the rules, play equipment not fenced and or exposed to street view, especially basketball hoops, yard signs, fences with unapproved color and design, trailers not stored behind screening, satellite dishes visible from the street, landscaping not completed before the 1-year time limit, landscaping done without submitting a plan to the ARB or not completed according to the plan, natural storm drainage altered, holiday lighting not taken down before the time limit. Utah HOA attorney Curtis Kimball on his website underscores the importance of strict enforcement. It's vital to understand that the governing documents are not guides containing mere recommendations for operation of the association. They are binding contracts. Their terms must be followed, and they must be followed strictly and precisely. A court will look at and enforce every sentence, even every word and punctuation mark of a governing document. One of the most common sources of lawsuits in associations is the failure of the board to know and abide by the governing documents and the law. The duty to treat members fairly requires consistent application of the rules. A board cannot selectively enforce a rule against one resident and ignore the same violation by another resident. Violations of Hill Farms rules are in plain sight. In the next few slides, I'll show a few representative examples, beginning with unauthorized trailer storage. It's not unusual to see multiple violations at single residents, such as clutter and a basketball goal. Satellite dishes visible from the street, and odd landscaping. Failure to mulch around parking strip trees. Mulching not only improves subdivision aesthetics, it also boosts a tree's health, protecting it from insects and trimmers, and reduces a tree's need for water. Garbage containers not enclosed. Again, often seen with other infractions. Yard signs. The 75% maximum lawn rule ensures homeowners have planting beds with trees, bushes, and flowers. Virtually every front yard that Destination Homes installs prior to sale, as required by Kaysville City, breaks the rule. Many side and backyards that the HOA ARB approves and homeowners install are in violation. 2 HOA directors who live in the subdivision ignore the restrictive covenants. It may be one among many reasons rules are not enforced if even directors don't comply. The brother of Destination Homes co-founder and declarant David Bailey built a fence that does not conform in either color or design. It's an infraction that managers have overlooked for years, and as recently as last year, another homeowner had to replace a non-conforming fence. Some violations are also safety hazards. I first learned of the HOA's disregard for hazards, which put all homeowners at financial risk, when workers removed a section of sidewalk next to our house on the park where kids play on bikes and scooters. The construction left a deep hole that was not barricaded. I made several attempts to get the HOA and declarant to mitigate the danger, but the hazard remained, not just for days, but weeks. Many insurance policies will not cover an insured if the owner insists on having a trampoline. An attractive nuisance legal theory can apply to owners who have play equipment that's likely to attract children, such as swimming pools and trampolines. Attractive nuisance is where a landowner may be liable for injuries even to children trespassing on their property. Homeowners are mostly, if not fully, responsible for what happens on their lots. But what about any HOA liability? If someone sustains a serious injury and sues, how long would it take plaintiff's legal counsel to determine that an HOA, per its rules, should have required a trampoline on private property to be fenced? Hill Farms covenants require play equipment to be fenced from public view. It's yet another restriction that has gone unenforced from day one. HOA management allows unfenced trampolines to be next to walkways where any child could be attracted to them, play on them, and suffer injury. HOA Director and President John McFarlane should know about this. He is a slip and fall attorney. Basketball goals are also supposed to be fenced and out of sight from the street. They present much less hazard compared to trampolines, but the HOA permits them to be placed where they're used on HOA alleys, which puts children at risk of being hit by a vehicle. Accident risk aside, children playing on alley roadways can be a nuisance to auto traffic. Hill Farms has several playgrounds. All playground equipment presents some degree of danger. That's part of what makes it fun. But how much danger is too much? In a playground equipment report issued by the Consumer Product Safety Commission, it found that from 2009 to 2014, nearly 1.5 million injuries associated with playground equipment were treated in emergency rooms. It's not unusual to hear of $1 million, $2 million, and even $10 million liability judgments. The CPSC handbook highly recommends adult supervision and signage that restricts some play equipment to certain age groups. Hill Farms playgrounds should meet this standard because all homeowners face liability, even for children from outside the HOA who frequently use the playgrounds. Some Hill Farms equipment does not meet the standards. For example, the saucer swing at the Hill Farms Lane Park is not recommended and presents unnecessarily high risk of serious accident, especially when several kids swing on it and smaller children are nearby. The stairs to a platform should not only have guardrails, but should be restricted to children over a certain age. Tots, even with adult supervision, need full bucket seats for safety, which the Hill Farms Park does not provide. One management company wrote, "A majority of associations take pains to post notices disclaiming any responsibility for personal injury incurred on the association's play equipment. But it's not enough just to hang a sign. While well-play signage does not absolve an HOA of responsibility, it does let playground users know that they're assuming a certain amount of risk by using the equipment." The HOA manager seems to not only be risk oblivious in connection with park play equipment safety, it also sponsored social gatherings at parks during the ongoing pandemic. The HOA should not have organized any events during the pandemic. Some or all park equipment should have been closed during the COVID-19 epidemic. Which leads to the question, is the Hill Farms HOA underinsured? Very likely. The policy provides for up to $1 million liability coverage per incident, including attorney fees added in. That is way too little, especially given the HOA's indifference to hazards for which homeowners could be liable. Consider this Q&A about coverage. Question: I'm a new board member concerned that our HOA doesn't have sufficient liability insurance, particularly an umbrella policy. We are a 125 single home gated community in California with very limited common use areas. No pools, tennis, golf club, house, and so on. It would appear a minimum of $5 million would be required. Some have suggested $20 million or more, but that seems high for our needs. Answer: in this reader's case, I think $20 million is high. It seems unnecessary. I think $5 million is plenty. And this note, Hill Farms has double the homes, several parks with play equipment, and extensive common use areas. Take a look at a Las Vegas case involving a boy's head injury. Here are excerpts from a newspaper account. A Nevada jury slapped a homeowners association with a $20 million verdict, including $10 million in punitive damages, in a lawsuit filed by a teenager who suffered a traumatic brain injury when a swing set's metal bar broke and landed on his head. The jury found the Lamplight Village Homeowners Association responsible. Lamplight argued that a property management company was responsible for maintenance of the neighborhood's playground, not the HOA. The insurance company only covered a maximum of $2 million out of the $20 million awarded at trial. Here's another Augustus Shaw video clip where he talks about how board members tend to limit coverage in order to keep insurance payments, thus monthly fees, low.
And you say to yourselves, well, all those are expensive. Can't we go a little less? Can't we cut here? We don't need general liability. We don't need $5 million worth. Let's just go to $1 million. The CC&Rs say the minimum's $1 million, so let's just have $1 million. So if you have a general liability claim of $2 million, and the broker said you need coverage of $5 million, and you say, well, we can afford $5 million, but we don't want to pay for $5 million, guess who's making up that extra $1 million that you're not covered for? The board is making up.
Developer Destination Homes, who is in control, has allowed the Hill Farms HOA to get into financial trouble. When an HOA is underfunded, does not have adequate reserves, it may be forced to keep insurance coverage too low, accept low bids from bad vendors, and skimp on common area maintenance. Hill Farms was required to do a financial reserve study, which was completed last summer. The study concluded that comparing the projected starting reserve balance of $47,000 versus the ideal reserve balance of $164,000, we find the association's reserve fund to be approximately 29% funded. This indicates a weak reserve fund position. We suggest adopting a monthly reserve contribution of $4,000, which would be an $18 per month per unit increase. If the contribution falls below this rate, then the reserve fund may fall into a situation where special assessments, deferred maintenance, and lower property values are likely at some point in the future. The study should be a wake-up call for all Hill Farms homeowners. As we've discussed, the HOA is likely underinsured, and the reserve fund is way too low. The board did recently raise monthly fees by $10, but many homeowners may not be aware it also raised another fee. There were 2 fee increases, not just one. The board, after meeting in secret, imposed a devious, kick-the-can-down-the-roads assessment called a reinvestment fee. Finally, Destination Homes voluntarily contributed $78,000 to the HOA in 2020. That is not a good thing, as one might think. It's a common developer tactic to keep fees artificially low. The developer, Destination Homes, the declarant, is going to great lengths to keep the monthly fee unrealistically low. Why? To sell homes. Monthly HOA fees are a sticking point for many buyers. When homeowners take over, they will face having to raise fees well beyond the 2 increases the board approved earlier this year. It's money needed to not only cover future maintenance, but also to fix shoddy construction and maintenance by the developer. Think about this KSL News report on HOA fees. KSL interviewed HOA consultant Jerry Campbell. He said, some HOAs are destined to run into financial trouble at no fault of their own because fees are set too low by developers. Keeping the dues artificially low, that's to encourage sales, Campbell said. One association advocacy website talked about HOA still under developer control. It said, the developer is likely keeping assessments artificially low to attract buyers. Another chimed in, often a builder-developer may keep dues artificially low to make it more attractive to buyers. They bury actual costs or absorb them. Here's another. Developers often keep the assessments artificially low in order to sell the units faster, then depart, leaving the HOA holding the bag. When developers are selling a home or unit in a new community, they market the low-cost lifestyle of a common interest community. These marketing tactics over time give buyers an inaccurate, long-term view of the real projected expenses associated with the community. The recently imposed reinvestment fee increase is, as I said, a devious tactic to keep down monthly fees. The so-called reinvestment fee, that hardly any member understands, was raised from a flat $400 per home sale to 0.5% of a sales price due at the time a home is sold. The developer exempted itself from both fees. I would have voiced no opposition to the monthly fee increase because reserves are way too low, but I would have voiced strong opposition to the reinvestment fee being raised, and actually to any reinvestment fee at all. Because the added assessments were devised in secret, I had no chance to speak in opposition. The reinvestment fee places a new lien on all Hill Farms HOA homes. It was filed in November 2020 but had to be amended in late January. It exempts the developer. So just what is the fee with a euphemistic name that gives you no clue what it is? It's a fee homeowners pay when they sell their homes and the money goes to the HOA. To assure payment, the HOA places a lien on every home, a lien that will not be released until payment is made. It's a kick-the-can-down-the-road fee. It defers a member's obligation to pay until the home is sold. The fee benefits only developers and homeowners who are overextended and can hardly afford the monthly fee increase. I object to any fee being raised without my input and without a board vote in an open meeting. I especially object to one that places an additional lien on our home. It complicates the sale, especially at closing. It's why many real estate agents oppose it. It reduces the equity an owner takes out at sale. I asked the Hill Farms attorney questions about it. When was it first proposed that the reinvestment fee be raised? Who made the proposal? Are there any records, among them possibly meeting minutes, emails, memos, that have information about January's 2 fee increases? Provide all communications to members about either the proposed or finalized reinvestment fee increase. Are any lots within the outer border of the subdivision exempt from the fee? His response: as far as I can tell, prior to its adoption, communications regarding the reinvestment fee all included Bert Willey from my office, who drafted the paperwork. Those communications are privileged. The reinvestment fee was authorized by the declarant by way of the 7th Amendment under amendment powers reserved by the declarant. The bylaws allow for action without meeting when a majority of board members approve an action. The assessment increase was approved as an action without meeting by the majority of the board members. I want to talk a bit more about director obligations and how well they're being fulfilled. Question: how closely do an HOA's CC&Rs, a declaration, bylaws, and articles of incorporation have to be followed? The answer: absolutely, and to the word. Some boards don't appreciate the weight that should be given to what the governing documents say. They tend to think you're able to pick and choose what you adhere to, or that if they simply aren't aware of what's in the documents, then there's no need to comply with them. Virtually nothing that is contained in governing documents is optional. They must be adhered to strictly and literally. Here's how an Arizona HOA attorney describes a board's duties.
Here's a list of your board member roles and responsibilities. Communicate. The best boards that are the most successful and have the least hassles communicate often with their owners. Be transparent in all your actions as a board member and quickly handle records requests by owners. Remember that you have a fiduciary duty to act in the best interests of the association in all your decision-making for the association. Read your governing documents at least one time a year and enforce the governing documents fairly and consistently. Oversee your management company if you have one.
Here's my report card for the Hill Farms Board, based on Mulcahy's benchmarks. Of course, I give directors an F, but I readily concede many Hill Farms homeowners, maybe a majority, are happy restrictions are not enforced and fees kept rock bottom. They would give the board an A grade. Recapping owner options for dealing with the crisis. Sue. It would not be easy, probably too many obstacles to that route. Petition the board. Would require a lot of signatures to carry any weight. Lobby the legislature. Sadly, chances for success are slim, mainly because the president of Destination Homes, the developer, is the Speaker of the Utah House. Here's a recap of what I said about Brad Wilson almost 2 years ago in my first report. Brad Wilson wears several hats. He is Destination Homes president and CEO, the developer. He was the initial Hill Farms HOA board member, a director, a current Legacy Neighborhoods principal, the declarant, and a Utah legislator, Speaker of the House. Wilson appears to make decisions based on what is in his best interest and in his company's best interest, and not in the interest of the HOA. He set up the Hill Farms HOA to avoid board meetings, avoid notices of board meetings, avoid making a record of board meetings, and to delay developer turnover. He set up the HOA so Destination Homes could add phase after phase, not only delaying transition of power to homeowners, but also allowing the development to grow to well past an unwieldy number of homeowners. We were told turnover would occur after Phase 6 was completed. It's now complete, but then Wilson's company added Phase 7, where construction has yet to begin. That will take at least another 2 years and will add another 52 homes to the HOA. Phase 7 is in another city, Layton. It makes an HOA that was already too big even bigger. At least 4 HOAs should have been created. There would have been quicker turnover to homeowners, a greater sense of neighborhood and community, and far easier to manage and get homeowner consensus. Here's Brad Wilson's most blatant conflict of interest. He used his legislative power not only against the Hill Farms HOA, but against all of them in Utah. Legislation he supported in 2017 amounted to an astounding conflict of interest and breach of his fiduciary duty to the Hill Farms HOA. He supported an extremely oppressive, anti-HOA consumer law that requires homeowners, upon taking control, to meet a list of burdensome requirements before they can sue a developer for construction defects, breaches of contract, and breaches of fiduciary duty. At a legislative hearing, HOA attorney Curtis Kimball described the bill as onerous when he spoke in opposition. HOA attorney John Morris, at the same hearing, called it one of the worst bills ever in connection with HOAs. A third attorney, Ted McBride, told legislators the measure is a step back in time, making it more difficult to pursue fiduciary claims. Wilson voted for the measure during that committee meeting and again on the House floor. Thanks for watching.